the crowd to officially restart. Is there
Yeah,
any way you would like to do that?
I'm gonna get the link up for everybody. The YouTube link. I'm gonna share it with you right now, and then we're gonna put it on our pages and ready to rock and roll. Because it's not like we don't have anything to talk about today. It's not like there's like nothing happening, and you're left in a situation where, oh gee, I wonder what the content on the show is going to be today.
Okay.
That's not how we're suffering today. All right, Jack, in chat right now. There's the YouTube link right there. You can share it. It's already on the Seth and Jack Show page, and we are rocking and rolling, my friend.
Okay, so what I want to do is point out a couple of my dear friends who are obviously rabid anti-Trumpers. And our friend Suki from Islesboro posted something this morning. Suki is probably one of the most erudite people that you'll ever find. And she posted, and this is so brilliant because it appeals to my perchance for visual things. She says Pence is so colorless that a whole room brightens when he leaves.
Yeah, we were just talking about the film industry before, and I was remembering the lessons about black being the absence of color and white being all colors.
Yes, exactly.
And I was just thinking about, Jessica and I heard a observation about Mike Pence that he was like a transparent gummy bear, like a clear gummy bear that's like a flavorless gummy bear that has no flavor, just like that.
Yeah.
Good. And last night we had all these congressional Republicans that were signing on to the impeachment. And this morning it stopped like dead in its tracks. And I thought to myself, I think I know what's going on here. I think basically Trump is running around, going from GOP congressman to GOP congressman, saying, hey, you remember that mob? You remember that mob that I called out? I'm just going to send them to your house now. You support this impeachment, I'm going to your house. It's forever going to be on your gravestone.
It's fascinating. And in the meantime, I just want to tell you that I hope, and let us know if you're there, my dear friend Jeff P, we're going to use his initial, and I had a wonderful experience last night, is that you go out to dinner at a really nice place with your buddy who you haven't seen in probably 8 months, and you realize you're probably the only two are carrying the heat in the whole place.
Wow.
And the reason I mentioned that is I don't think the Trumpers realize how many armed liberals there are out there. I mean, seriously. And I don't think they have the imagination to realize they make the mistake of carrying their ARs on their chest. They are going to be the first ones to get it. It's like a machine gunner when he opens up in combat. He has like a 3-second lifespan. Who are you going to go after first? You're going to go after the guy with the AR. That's how stupid they are. Okay? If you're the Capitol Police and you end up having to shoot at the inauguration, who are you going to aim at? The guy with the AR. I mean, how stupid is that, Seth?
It's, for me, it's a phenomenal miscalculation. The whole thing is a phenomenal miscalculation, unless, of course, your ultimate goal was to damage American democracy to the extent that it's that that there's a real impact. Now, Jack, I wonder if there's an issue with the broadcast, because I'm not seeing anybody signing on to the show. I see it on the page. I just don't know if something went wrong. I can see that I broadcasted to both the Seth and Jack Show group and YouTube content channel. I wonder if somebody would.
Let me do this, Seth. Let me grab this link, okay, and let me click on it. We may get feedback, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to get feedback here too.
Okay, I just want to see.
Yeah. And I'm checking to see if we can see it. Yeah, no, we can. I just clicked on it. People can watch. I guess we're boring the shit out of people. Nobody's logged on yet.
Okay, hang on. Okay, Seth. So, Seth, I just grabbed the link again, and I'm going to put it on my page. Okay?
Yeah. And I think what's happening right now is everybody's watching the impeachment hearings.
Are they that interesting at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's watching the impeachment hearings. I think that's what's happening right now. The entire country is doing their thing. So we'll do our show and then upload it later when we get some viewers.
Yeah, but then we're not interacting the way I like, Let's give it a minute or two.
It is what it is.
Seth.
Yeah, we can't make the people watch.
Oh, yes, we can.
Yeah, go ahead. Good luck with that.
We just have to insult the Trumpers enough to get them interested. Okay, so what I was going to say to you, Seth, is because I got up really late today. What's happened in the news in the last 3 hours?
Well, what they're doing is they're going through the they're now going through the process of debating the resolution on the House floor, which gives us, kind of an opportunity to talk about the goings on amongst ourselves. Because
Seth,
they have a bunch of Republicans that signed on to it last night, and then unfortunately, after they signed on last night to the resolution, I think Trump, ended up working the phones and threatening these Republican Congresspeople, with the mob of hoodlums that's going to show up at their front door if they support the impeachment. I think he's desperate, and I think he's working the phones in an attempt to get his people to vote against this terrible injustice.
Look at the picture I posted of the National Guard sleeping in the Capitol.
Wow.
How about that?
Is that where we are?
That's where we are.
Is that where we are? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, let me make this bigger if I can. Hang on.
Yeah, it's okay. I can make it bigger. So those are what you're looking at is National Guard troops sleeping in the U.S. Capitol to protect it from U.S. citizens. That's where we are. So,
Seth, as a former reservist, and I'm reserved about mentioning that.
Right. Do you have reservations?
Yes, very good. When your weekend is ruined by being called up to sleep on a marble floor, do you think maybe you're just a little pissed off?
That's your service to your country, my friend.
It is, but at the same time, don't you think you're a little pissed off?
Yeah, I can imagine you'd be a little pissed off, and I can imagine that there's a conversation happening now amongst the Trump loyalists, where the more news that comes out and the more they see their fellow Trumpists become ensnared by the police, and the more they see the grown-ups start to take charge, and the more they get to understand that Donald Trump will not be the president re-inaugurated on January 20th, then what's going to happen is we're going to have a kind of filtering out of the ones that were duped from the ones that are psychotic. And the ones that are psychotic are just like this Ashley Babbitt chick,
Mm-hmm.
the one that caught a 45 slug in the neck trying to break into the cloakroom in the nation's capital. 44, 45. She once again, she was cured by hot lead. If you look at Ashley Babbitt as being emblematic of the Trumpist, Jessica was kind enough to share an article with me about Ashley Babbitt's family business, which is a pool service business in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And then last week we shared the video of Ashley Babbitt making her pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. in the car with her screeching manifesto as she tries to convince all of the world, what her worldview is. It was obvious to anybody that watched that this is a lady with tremendous psychological problems. And I was on the Facebook page of a friend this morning who I won't mention. And this Facebook page from this friend, who is a woman who lives alone in Brooklyn Heights. And she said, I reached a low point yesterday. I emotionally reached a low point yesterday. And a friend of hers, and this woman is a professor in the CUNY system, City University of New York. And a friend of hers said something fascinating that I'd like to give kind of anonymous credit for, because it happened on an opt-in Facebook page, that I feel that shouldn't, out people. The friend said a number of people who are from narcissistic family groups or narcissistic family systems, she said, are experiencing trauma now.
Interesting.
And I thought about that in relation to Ashley Babbitt and the psychological triggers that gave her permission to act the way that she was acting. And I thought, well, that's a fascinating area of exploration for the future. And I got to tell you, Jack, that it's going to be, we do ourselves a collective disservice if we don't talk about expanding the understanding of mental illness in this country, or at least expanding the idea of how psychology is informing all of these interactions and groupthink in the public space. Because, our friends in Russia have figured it out, and they figured out what our psychology is. God help them when we honestly, geopolitically, this is going to be, come get some.
It's interesting because if you speak geopolitically, it's really only the first world cultures that really benefit from a complex psychoanalytic analysis of the citizenry. When people are worrying about where their next meal is, it gets much simpler psychologically. But in the complexity of what our country has become, then we have to turn to a much deeper analysis of why people act the way they do. And it's more complex and it's more subtle. And so when we talk about white privilege of entitlement, we're not talking about the 1%. We're talking about everybody. Okay, this has become a ubiquitous problem, and for different reasons than the Trumpian 1% spoiled pricks, that have more money than God. We're talking about the average American. Why do they feel entitled?
Yeah, and let's talk about this right now.
Oh,
Rick Wilson.
hang on one second. They somebody says I'm muffled, Seth. Hang on, I have to address this. Am I not muffled, Seth?
Move your microphone in front of your mouth. I can hear you.
Yeah, but here and muffled are two different things. Hang on one second. I may have to do a refresh here, Seth. Hang on one second.
Okay, you know what? Do a refresh, and I'm going to read. And just so you know, I'm going to read this tweet from Rick Wilson. Okay.
Please.
He says, Crow, referring to Representative Jason Crow, who says, I had a lot of conversations with my Republican colleagues. A couple of them broke down in tears, saying they're afraid for their lives if they vote for this impeachment. Numerous House Republicans have received death threats in the past week, and I know for a fact several members want to impeach, but fear that casting the vote could get them or their families murdered. And you're back. Yeah, you're back. Yeah, it's better.
But it's still not.
And no. It is what you intended it to be.
Okay.
So that's the story now that we were right, that what's happening is that Republican House members are receiving death threats from the Trumpers.
Do you know, Seth, that this is yet another wonderful indictment opportunity?
It is.
In the sedition case. This is going to be when they are able to access these calls and where they came from, because they will. These wankers, these cellar dwellers living with mom are going to experience a level of punishment they never thought they would get close to.
No, not only did they never think they would get close to, they don't have the capacity to process it.
That's it. And it's going to be such a shock when Bubble crawls up into the upper bunk to massage them. And they are, I think some of these people are shitting bricks, Seth.
And the danger here is that they all go away to prison in such tremendous numbers that they start to come up with a kind of like Bud Light push group think in Leavenworth, and now I want our viewers to know that because we are streaming also on the Facebook group, which was a mistake, I admit it. What's happening is we're not seeing your names associated. It's in your comments. Somebody says mom's cellar dwellers are a product of codependency. Yeah, they are a product of codependency. I'm not sure if you heard my observation before that people are saying now that a lot of people are experiencing trauma because they're products of narcissistic family systems and have been. And I think that's a very valid, take on the psychological effects of what Donald Trump has done to the country. I think that go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's just the family system. I mean, this kind of entitlement is very much a product of society. And, Italy has had the same problem in the last 5 or 10 years, where sons, because of the economics of their situation or whatever, live at home. And there's a word in Italian they call them, and that's mamone, mama's boy, mamone. And
yeah, but that the Italian family structure.
True.
It goes with a process of nurturing, It goes with the process of support. It goes along with the process of healthy interhuman relationships, healthy touching and affection between other human beings. It also has dietary benefits. You know, there are Mediterranean dietary traditions that lead to a healthier physical being. So, you know, the idea that this economy that we're in now, that has forced people into a situation where they're forced to cohabitate and then experience shame as a result of that, I think is a very dangerous thing that we need to address. Having said that, the fact that, you know, Horn Boy Agnelli is a mama's boy cellar dweller who went on a hunger strike because they refused to feed him organic food.
I love this.
And then the judge acquiesced like he's on a fucking flight, like he's on a JetBlue flight. This guy gets a religious. Why not just say that he wanted a halal or kosher menu?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as opposed to organic food. I only eat organic food because my fucking batshit crazy QAnon conspiracy theory is now codified as a religion. Congratulations, jailer. You just codified QAnon as a religion.
You know, it's wonderful.
And Martha, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Martha. I think that maybe what economically would be a really good move is to open a takeaway kosher deli next to the Brooklyn House of Detention. If this catches on, Seth.
You need another one? It's Brooklyn. What the fuck do you think is happening in Brooklyn?
So you were telling me what's happening in the news. How many Republicans in the House have voted with the Democrats?
5 of them. So, well, I saw that the resolution on rules. I don't think it got any R votes. We have R votes that are going. Tim, see if you log on to the show through YouTube, we can see your name. If you log on to the show through the Seth and Jack Show group page, we can't see your name. So Tim says the Coen brothers are furiously taking notes. You know, Jack and I have been talking about what this film is going to look like. Yeah, hold on a sec. All right, let's do it. Let's do a viewer contest right now in the comment stream. Is the Trump administration going to be more like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World? Is it going to be more like Animal House? What film do you think the Trump administration biopic will most closely resemble? Throw your observations in the comments and we'll put them up on the screen as we go on. What is it going to be like? Dog Day Afternoon? On the beach? The day after? Tomorrow? What's it going to be? What kind of film is the Trump administration? Jack, what's your take? What do you think?
Well, my
already
take.
talked about Dr. Strangelove, I know.
Okay, are you done? So
Yeah.
my take. My take on this, of course, will always go toward the Coen brothers, not necessarily for Fargo, the film, but Fargo, the series, because this is what these things are based on. He has a formula.
Requiem for a Dream, says Jim.
Jimmy. So let me tell you about the Coen brothers. They have a wonderful, wonderful basic, it's not even formulaic, but it's a basic theme. And that is small town, Midwest, vacuum cleaner salesman gets involved in something shady and ends up dealing with the Oklahoma City mob. Okay, that is their thing. And given the fact that so many of these wankers come from these small towns, they go to Washington and get caught up with a 20-year jail term. To me, that profile fits so that the perspective of the film is is Ashley, whatever her name is, but it's the guy who is works at the tire rack, loves Trump, flies or drives to Washington, D.C., and gets caught up in this world that he was so entitled to the things that he had. He never realized what the reality of this world was. Prison, gangsters, psychopaths. These are other Trumpers. So to me, that's the formula. Okay.
Yeah.
Tim is great. I love it. Find yourself.
Jessica says that the Trump biopic will be more like Darren Aronofsky.
Yep.
Darren Aronofsky, who is one of my cousin Raphael's good friends growing up in high school.
Well, that's unimportant. But
no, it's not. He's another Jew from Brooklyn. What's unimportant, what's absolutely irrelevant, are how many camera operators came out of Princeton, New Jersey. That is unimportant. What is genuinely important is how many genius Jews have come out of Brooklyn, including the little fur hat wearing douchebag whose father is a Brooklyn Supreme Court judge.
By the way,
just got arrested yesterday.
And he was crying all the time in court.
Of course he was. Oh. Because these people are the ultimate snowflakes. They are the ultimate representation of snowflakism. Lord of the Flies. Right? Lord of the Flies.
Okay, so Martha, I want to address this. This basement dweller came from Trey Crowder. What did he say? The best of America's basement dwellers is something like that. And it is
people.
Trey Crowder is one of the funniest people on earth. I absolutely adore him. And we are going to try to get him to come on the show. We probably won't because he has his own stuff, but he is God when it comes to this shit. And he mentioned, and of course they're the basement dwellers. They live in Mama's house. And they live in the basement. They have the flags on the wall. They have their guns down there. They dress up in front of the mirror in their fucking camo every evening to see how cool they look. These are who these fuckers are.
The funny thing is, Jack, the truth, you can't stop it from coming out. It's like trying to hold water in a bucket made out of sand. You just can't stop the truth from coming out. And the truth is, the vast majority of these people are from dysfunctional households, and they have some degree of active mental illness that has been triggered by these events. The shocking thing to the rest of us is just how mentally ill the people that we live in this country with are. And the only difference between before Trump and after Trump is we have gotten a chance to see up close and in person what that looks like activated. Because the bullhorn of mental illness that was the Trump administration has been far-reaching.
Years.
And Martha makes a good observation. Look what she says. Their mothers didn't raise independent offspring. These are highly dependent human beings.
Okay, let me say something. 10 years ago, you always heard the neighbors saying, "Oh, but he was such a nice boy." Okay, he lived in the cellar of his parents' home. He was an introvert. He stayed by himself, and then he went out and he blasted a classroom of students. Okay, this is quintessential. What has happened since then? He has been provided not only with a platform, but an icon for his insanity. Okay, that is what happened. It's not necessarily a family thing. It's because we have given the stage, provided the stage for these people to act out their mental illness, Seth.
Is icon the right word? Paradigm. Something to strive for. some kind of idol.
Okay, so somebody just said, is ignorance a mental illness? And that is such a huge topic. Let me just say that mental illness, it's not individual mental illness as much as social mental illness. And that's what this country is experiencing. It's not an oblique human being living in a basement. This is a national disgrace, Martha. And
Yeah, and it's also a question of cultural, quote, paradigm shift.
yes,
The degree to which our culture is changing in a way which is incompatible with people who have been conditioned with these dysfunctions, and it's not willful ignorance anymore, Tim. I think there is willful ignorance implies that these people are as fully formed as the other people in the cultural equation. I don't think we can argue that these people are as fully formed as the other people on the other side of this equation. I think we have a serious, okay, Martha has an observation. Her son was in graduating class with Sandy Hook shooter. Is his degree of mental illness emblematic to one extent or another, and his mother refused to get him help? We all saw how that ended up. What is the difference? I ask you, what is the difference between that shooter and Ashley Babbitt?
Here is the thing, and there's a personal case that I know of where a very schizophrenic student ended up committing mass murder, or a large amount of murder. I sound like Trump. And he had been diagnosed, but socially, his family were afraid of the stigma.
Yep. And you and I both know this kid, Jack.
Yes. Now, that is an interesting example, but let's go back to Bubba in the basement, Seth, because I want to get a better picture of him and his psychology. There are always going to be kids, particularly given the environment in high school, bullying, everything that exists for a high school student in adolescence, that is going to cause a certain number of students to isolate themselves and try to make themselves feel normal, representative, human, intelligent, all the things they're denied in the social setting. Okay, so they're living in this person's living in the basement, trying to feel better about himself. Now, why is he feeling that way? Not because of his family. It's because he has red hair, or because he's skinny and little, whatever the reason, or he's an alien from another country, or he's black in a mostly white. It doesn't matter what it is. It's interesting that they're white. So what does he do? He can now turn to the internet and find a group of incels just like himself, and he will immediately identify with their messaging. And that messaging is violent because it involves persecuting the people who persecuted him.
And to some degree, the people that we are talking about, the Trump supporters, have always regarded, once again, just look around. Look around. Use the tools that God has given you, your own perceptions of who you understand these people to be, and just look at them honestly. These are not, by and large, these are not people who you would who have a lot in common with us. we have been divided from those people. I don't know how we bridge that gap, because you have people who are actively refusing to engage in the same rules and guidelines of behavior that are codified in our Constitution and founding documents, but that these people feel have dispossessed them. But when push comes to shove, there is no set of policy objectives that they demand. It's just fuck you. It's just, I can't take it anymore and fuck you. Well, what can't you take anymore? You can't take anymore the fact that you are a person that is not capable of growing at the same speed at which our culture is changing.
Very good, Seth.
You can't do it. You can't grow. You can't adapt. You have to say, stop the fucking ride. I didn't buy the E-ticket. I bought the A ticket. I wanted the little Dumbo ride, you know, where I could wave to mommy on the side and it was going really slow. I didn't buy the E-ticket Space Mountain. I'm in the dark and I don't know how to interpret this. I can't even speak the same language that these people speak. I know I'm seeing it every day. I see it on my phone every day. I'm deluged by it. I'm required to engage in it. I'm required to change my behavior and wear a mask. This thing about wearing a mask, Jack.
Amazing.
If you go to Ashley Babbitt's house and her husband, they run a pool business, and outside the pool business is an American flag, a QAnon flag, hanging high from the rafters. From the flagpole, a QAnon flag, and a sign on the front of the business that says, no masks allowed, and if you wear one, we can't help you. Now, the ex-husband and the current boyfriend is not speaking to the press. The Ashley Babbitt Memorial spokesperson that is speaking to the press is their live-in girlfriend. So these crazy libertines, they kind of went off. They kind of went off the cultural deep end. I'm not saying that, you know, having a three-way, sexual relationship with a live-in girlfriend and your boyfriend isn't perfectly permissible. What I'm saying is, this chick was a fucking crazy lady, just like Piano Scarf Lady, just like Elizabeth.
And
who got maced and didn't realize that storming of the Capitol and sedition and insurrection would result in any punishment from her, because the person that runs the federal government told her to do it. That is why we are impeaching today.
Seth, it can be much simpler than this. These people feel entitled. Problem number one. Some of their entitlement to get what they want, like the president they want, is taken away. So they are disentitled, disenfranchised, and they're angry. Isn't that a simple equation?
Yeah, but what's disenfranchising them? My argument is that what's disenfranchising them is the technocultural revolution.
I agree.
And the pace of change of Western civilization. And it all goes back to the message of the Hopi elders 15, 20 years ago, when they said, think about our culture as a river. This is why my TED Talk was called Navigating the River of Paradigm Shift.
Mm-hmm.
Think about our culture as a river that's picking up pace. And think about these people, the Trumpers, as people who are clinging to the edge of the shore and getting ripped apart the faster the pace picks up. And the more they cling to that shore of don't change anything, the more destruction they will experience. The only hope that we have is to push off, as the Hopi elders say, the only hope that we have is to push off, join your community in the middle of that river, like we're doing here on this show today, and try to figure out with your community how to best deal with this tremendous change, or for that matter, participate in that change.
Okay, so That's why I take umbrage with the fact of somebody saying that it's a family problem.
It's a stew, Jack.
It is, but
You
still, it's
you can't separate the fact that we have such tremendous cultural dysfunction in this country from what happens in these households, including addiction behaviors.
it's American nations, Seth. You don't bring them all together without a bit of strife.
We have different cultural traditions in this country.
Yes.
We also have different visual traditions in this country as well.
Mhm.
The idea that someone that is raised in the concrete and asphalt environment that is New York City,
Brooklyn.
where the buildings and the architecture inform your visual understanding of the world, the idea that that person has a commonality with somebody that grew up hunting in the woods is laughable.
Mhm. I agree. And that's why
Reconcile those things.
that's why the whole gun issue, because someone who lives in Maine, if you don't have multiple guns in Maine, you haven't been here that long. And yet, are you going to use the same rules for Maine that you do for New York City? I mean, 99% of gun owners in Maine are law-abiding citizens. In New York, it's a very different story. And you wonder why these people react the way they do?
Apparently, Jim Jordan and Louis Gohmert are doing their best to scream their opposition to the impeachment now as we speak. I really don't give a flying fuck about what they have to say. They've had their chance, and this is offset by Nancy Pelosi's statement, which I will read a sentence of now. Nancy Pelosi says, quote, "We know that we faced enemies of the Constitution. And we know that the President of the United States incited this insurrection, this armed rebellion against our common country." End of story.
Interesting. So Jim Jordan is talking now?
You want to call it talking or screaming?
Well, Jim Jordan is a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Honor, which is one of the funniest fucking things I've ever heard. Maybe feels licensed or enabled or entitled to have a voice, which is a big mistake.
Yeah.
He's a scumbag.
Yeah, Jim Jordan is shockingly, Jim Jordan decided to wear a jacket to the Congress today.
He wasn't showing off his muscles.
No, he's going to have plenty of chance to do that later. You know what I mean? Apparently, Jack, there were Congress people who gave a recon tour through the halls of Congress earlier. Let me ask you this one question, then we can discuss. When the Federal Bureau of Investigations gets done doing their thing, which they will do, and it will, just like the sand bucket trying to hold water, the truth will out. When the Federal Bureau of Investigations gets done doing its thing, and it is revealed that there was a conspiracy that involved members of Congress, and that these very same members of Congress, let me ask you this. How would these people know to go to the House parliamentarian's office and ransack that? Why would you do that?
Because
they were looking for the certificates.
Well,
they were looking for the certification of the Electoral College.
Yes, and you probably had a tour guide.
Yes, and when you come to the realization that these members of Congress were pressured by Donald Trump to engage in this conspiracy, and that Donald Trump was a knowing and and not only knowing, but that this conspiracy was probably hatched by Rudy Giuliani, and that Rudy Giuliani whispered to Donald Trump, the only hope we have to stay out of jail is this, because you're faced with Rudy Giuliani and the cops that couldn't shoot straight, knowing they're going to go to jail because they're not dumb, they're just crazy. And the only hope they had was a violent insurrection against the United States of America, in which they would take the actual physical instruments of the Electoral College and hold them hostage somehow as if they couldn't be replicated, and potentially kill the leaders of the Democratic caucus in Congress. How does that, and while a week ago, the statement that I just made would probably result in me being taken away in a straitjacket, this week, that statement is absolutely possible. As a matter of fact, I think it's likely that the President of the United States encouraged a violent insurrection that would result in the undoing of our American democracy so that he could stay out of jail.
Yep. And you know, last night, Rachel went through a very, very similar analysis of what you just said. He said, let me get this straight.
I didn't watch
This
it.
guy calls the attorney general or whoever he was of Georgia. He does this, then he does this, then he calls for his followers to do this, then he does that because he hopes that this and that. And she went through the whole litany. And she leans forward and she says, Mr. President, do you really think this was going to work? It was absolutely beautiful. And when you look at them listed, all the things that he's done in the last 2 weeks, only a serious psychopath could think that you could take over the government doing this.
Well, we know that he's a serious psychopath, right?
Right.
And we know that he has problems dealing with ideas of his own destruction. And now he is in the White House, absolutely losing his shit, and in a position where, you know, Jack, he's never been here before, and he's also been hemmed in by not only circumstance and his own stupidity. He's also been hemmed in by the Joint Chiefs. Now, the one defining characteristic about Donald Trump is that he largely telegraphs everything that he's going to do. So how is it that armed insurrection within the U.S. military wasn't the first way he decided to go? Well, because military leadership already hates him, because he already burned that bridge. But he couldn't not burn that bridge because he's that fucking stupid.
Yep.
Donald Trump is the lowest IQ president we've ever had. His lack of curiosity, his lack of reading, his ability to read. If you had to put a gun to my head, I'd say the fucking guy can't even spell insurrection.
And to say nothing of his lack of self-knowledge, which is astronomical, Seth.
But it is also what attracts his followers to him, because lack of self-knowledge is their defining characteristic, because they're cowards.
Yes.
And the ultimate act of bravery is inner exploration.
So, Seth, we're going to be done with him, however it gleefully happens in the next week.
Yeah.
So it's important for us, and I know you're aware of this, to start turning our sights to the toadies. And so I saw this tweet of Mike Mullins about doing a commercial action, shutting down themselves from Twitter and Facebook and the social media platforms, calling for a reaction to their reaction to Trump. Tell me about this, because I'm not really into local
so that was
politics.
that was in the public domain, right?
Yes.
It was in Maine. Republicans
Something like that. Yeah.
Mid-Coast Maine Republicans or Knox County Republicans page.
Yes.
Pay very, very, very close attention to who is talking about freedom of speech and who is talking about freedom of expression and who is not talking about sedition and insurrection. The people who are talking now about freedom of speech are the genuine enemies of our constitutional republic. This former candidate for the Maine House seat, a guy named Mike Mullins, who is in my opinion, a endless fountain of material for local hysteria and comedy. It's a guy who's, now there's two different levels of the judiciary in the state, which mirror our federal government. There's House seats, and then there's a Maine State Senate. He ran for a House seat, a Maine State House seat. And I think Maine State House members make a ridiculously small amount of money per year, like $2,000 or $3,000, right? This seat that he wanted to run for, which is currently occupied by Valley Geiger of Rockland or Owl's Head. It's a Rockland and Owl's Head legislative seat. He spent $90,000 on this campaign. He also employed a local campaign manager, and their messaging was just like the messaging you'd expect from I found the campaign grossly dishonest, and I wrote about it, and he lost. And he lost because he was disingenuous. He pretended to be a progressive. As a matter of fact, he said, "I'm a progressive you can vote for." When push came to shove, he is a rabid Trumper that you can't vote for. But his signage was blue and green and gave you the impression that he was a Democratic liberal. So visual dishonesty. And it's not that far from there to leap to think that there's intellectual dishonesty at the core of what that public being is. And now he's posting on this local Republicans page that local Republicans should boycott and delete the Facebook app and Twitter and boycott Amazon and everybody that has silenced Donald Trump from setting the country on fire. These people want you to punish them. So what I suggest is that there will be a equal and more numerous response to that. And I think I will have an announcement about that in the near term. I'm working on something that I think needs to happen in the state, and I'll be talking about that later on. I sent you an email about it last night, Jack, but we'll have that announcement a little bit later on next week.
I think that in this hunt for Trumpers, which obviously we both agree has to be done locally everywhere in the United States, hunt is maybe the wrong. I think the question is we have to out them. And Seth has come up with a plan that hopefully could work, and not only here but in other places, to facilitate this process. We can't. They're retreating at the moment, no matter what the images look like of these morons with the camo jackets. They are in retreat, and they're going to find places to hide. They're going to find little caves, and they're going to hide under deadfalls. And I think it's very important that part of our agenda is outing these people, because they're all going to start changing to middle of the road messaging, and they're going to really try to change their camo.
Do you know what this reminds me of, man? Do you remember that? Do you remember Band of Brothers in the final episode when they're hunting for the Nazi prison guards?
Refresh me.
Well, at the end of World War II, when U.S. Special Forces was tasked with, combing the German and Austrian countryside for retired German officers from Dachau and Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, etc., and Treblinka, all of these people, they vanished into the woodwork, they vanished into the woodwork because they didn't have the communications or the technology that we have now, or the records of their behavior.
Yes.
So that's an impossibility.
Yes.
But like if you think about the members of Einsatzgruppen A and B that stormed through Eastern Europe, machine gunning Jews like my great aunts and uncles who died in the street for the simple reason that they were Jews. Those people got off. The people behind the machine guns and the clubs, and they went back to their life. And maybe the difference between then and now is the technology.
You know what it is, Seth?
We have electric footprints.
You know what? Yes, exactly. Well put. It was never more true, the expression, you can run, but you can't hide. And just by the fact that Parler, everything that has ever been on Parler was downloaded by a hacker. So these people, instead of facing charges of trespassing, destruction of government property, are going to be charged with conspiracy to whatever, which adds a 20-year sentence onto whatever other sentence you have.
One of the most I felt yesterday, and I don't know if you felt this as well, but that comment I heard this morning about people that were from narcissistic family systems, not everybody came out of that the same. My mother was tremendously mentally ill, and dealing with that has informed my understanding of human psychology. Full transparency.
Seth, this is saying somebody's that a narcissistic family system. I'm sorry, I can't give much attention or credence to that idea. I know that it exists. I know what it is, Seth. But
what I'm asking you to do is expand your understanding of it in a cultural sense.
Well, I can only look at it. I say the family system, as important as it is just one item in a huge laundry list of items that cause this kind of social behavior.
It's a foundational thing.
It is.
And if you on the other side of the equation, there are people on the left who also came from narcissistic family systems who are, who may or may not be radical leftists, but that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about a cycle. We're talking about cultural implications, but on the broad scale. But eventually, Jack, you have to drill down to the details and to get another idea, to be able to, the pointillism of how we're putting this picture together. It's not easy. It's not like, it's not like we can look at the canvas and understand exactly what's happening right now. It's going to take some time and some reflection to be able to fully put this together. But what I was going to say is that for me personally, just my personal observation about how I felt about the state of the country yesterday, I think was the first day that I was able to take a breath of fresh air and be able to perceive this abomination, holy pulpit that he occupies, within different context. I don't feel threatened by Donald Trump anymore. I don't feel the same level of reaction and anger in that sense. I don't feel like I'm going to have to shoot somebody tomorrow. I feel like we're now in the place where we can all begin the emotional digestion of what it is that has just happened. And that is terrifying news for people like Mike Mullins, who spent $90,000 on a seat he'll never occupy, and whose behaviors are going to be revealed for what they actually are. Not that this guy went down to Washington to engage in sedition, but they are supportive of that.
Okay.
The local ones and go ahead, Jack, please.
Do not lecture me, number one, on getting to the granular basis of this. So,
Why not?
because I don't fucking need it.
I'm sorry. Are we exploring the psychology of the country?
That's exactly what we're doing. Don't lecture me on it. Okay.
What do you think this is? It's an exploration. At
It
what
is.
point? At what point do we at what point do we stop having a conversation and start having a lecture? I'm not
Well,
trying to threaten you. I'm just saying this
you're
is
not-
helpful for me.
You're not threatening me, Seth. All
I'm saying, and when did it start turning into a lecture, and when did it stop being a discussion between two people talking about what's happening in the world?
when you started your last diatribe, that's when it started. So, Seth, what I'm saying about this is, I, of course, am not going to ignore the family in this. Okay. Of course, I'm not going to ignore it. Come on, Seth. Okay. So I don't like to be an extra. Number two, this isn't like it was in 1930, where the family structure on the plains of Oklahoma was everything, because there was nothing else. What I'm saying is, this family analysis that you're doing in contemporary 2020 America is not as important as it used to be. Look at the kid in the basement. What does he do in this situation? He finds his own tribe, his own murderous, psychotic tribe to follow. It's not like you have to go milk the cow. You have to come in at 5 a.m. And the fact that your father beats your mother and beats you is basically life. It's not like that anymore. Okay, so I don't need to be lectured about how important the family is. Okay, I understand that. I've studied that. What I'm saying is that this is only one small element, because we're in 2020, of what the problem is. It's not a cause of everything. Okay, and I think Martha tends to think that that this is the cause. It's not anymore. The family has changed. There are other things that have become much more important to analyze.
So let's distill this.
Please.
You are less interested in the foundational elements of the behavior of the individual that happen within the family dynamic in the first 5 years of life, and more interested in the cultural dynamics that happen when they disappear into their mother's bedroom, into their mother's basement, and find their tribe of miscreants and malcontents.
Yes, because, and let me tell you why. The history of psychology has been geared toward and given its full attention to the family. The whole history of psychology, no matter who it is. What you have to be careful about missing is that attention to family, as important as it is. I studied this like everybody else has mutated. It's metastasized. Missing my tooth. Metastasized into a social dynamic that Freud could never have predicted or seen.
I think Freud would be infinitely fascinated with what's happening now.
He would, but none of these guys could have predicted the effect of social media on this previously Skinner box of the family.
Why is it that this particular kind of behavior is isolated to authoritarian Eastern European countries and the United States?
That's not true.
Where else is it taking shape?
Have you tried the East? Have you looked at countries like Vietnam and Indonesia and Malaysia?
Right. No, I'm talking about the the defining characteristics of the authoritarian groupthink as expressed through social media and other platforms? Is there a difference,
Yes.
between those in this part of the world and others? And by the way, I'm perfectly willing to explore this as a topic of conversation without accusing anybody of lecturing me.
Okay. I appreciate that ability. But let me say this. I think that maybe in this country, it's been tempered by entitlement more than other countries.
Entitlement. And where did that come from?
That's what we're talking about. It's taken generations, Seth. So when you start talking,
and in the United States, there's a tradition of a have and have-nots culture that is being ripped away through the advent of mass media and technology.
that's true.
You can't have it. You can't watch somebody be beaten to death because of their skin color. You can't watch that and defend.
Yep. But keep in mind, this resource now is available to the whole world, and it's a lot more ubiquitous in other cultures than it is here. This resource of being able to information. So what is the? You're right. I mean, looking for the difference. What is the difference? And it's we think that this country is special, and that's one of the flaws here. I think that everybody is convinced that we are somehow morally superior, and it's been shown under Trump that in fact we are not. We are just like every banana republic or authoritarian regime in the world.
I disagree. As a matter of fact, I think we are showing our exceptionalism today.
I agree. And I agree on that. What I'm really saying is we are capable of what the Germans were capable of.
Yes, and yet good will out and we win and the Trumpists lose, like I said they would. And the only reason I said they would is because I believe in the ideas of American exceptionalism. I believe in the guardrails of our constitutional republic. And I believe that these actors are a minority and that we continue to grow as a nation. And the more technology infuses itself into our democracy, the better off we are. The technology that we have that surrounds us, while it organizes these mouth-breathing scumbags, can also be used as a cudgel against bad-acting police officers. When technology is infused in decision-making based on rules and not perceptions.
Okay, you and I both listened to Schwarzenegger's talk, his speech on YouTube, which was phenomenal.
Brilliant.
And his analogy with the sword, and that the sword is like America, that the more you heat it up, pound it, and stick it in cold water, the stronger it gets. I love that analogy. And I don't disagree with me. You were right, Seth, at least from today's perspective, that democracy will win out. I was always more on the side that this is the end of a noble experiment where, unfortunately, this is under Trump, obviously, and Trump's popularity, where this country was just going to be another Roman Empire. The thing being that now things change so quickly that it would happen a lot faster.
Well, I will say that remains to be seen.
Yes.
But in this particular period in history, given the fact that the American experiment is now informed by a technology that we are the leaders in, the global leaders in, and that now this technology unwittingly, this IoT revolution has revealed the horrific nature of these human beings. The only difference between this insurrection and the one that happens 50 years from now is that we'll be able to see that one in real time. In other words, what we're seeing now is we have these guys from the FBI, not the director of the FBI, by the way. God forbid that motherfucker should show up at a press conference. Fucking coward. Political coward. Cowed by this scumbag fuck in the White House. This motherfucking piece of shit. Wannabe gangster, bridge and tunnel. Fucking scumbag. Ignorant. Otherwise, this motherfucker would have been driving a cab for not even a yellow cab, for a fucking car service. With the headquarters would have been in a fucking stinky cigarette stained basement. That's what Donald Trump would have been if it wasn't for Fred Trump's dollars. Donald Trump would have been just another mouth-breathing, bridge and tunnel scumbag that resented the people from the schools that I went to and the people that I hung out because he was never smart enough to be part of that club.
Here we go. Ready,
This
Seth?
piece of shit.
Seth, Brighton Beach.
Brighton Beach. Brighton Beach. Motherfucker. Fuck this car service driving piece of shit. You know, I know this guy. I worked for this guy. I know exactly who he is. He was absolutely goodbye, Tom.
Have we lost everybody?
I guess we lost Tom. Maybe Tom didn't like me calling out Donald Trump for the cab driver that he's what. I don't know who Tom is.
No, Tom is wonderful. Tom is a luthier. He is one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. He's got a wonderful, generous spirit. He understands exactly what we're saying. And the reason for leaving, Tom just had an operation, I think, a week ago, and he's recovering. The reason for leaving is not that he was miffed by anything, I don't think.
Maybe he doesn't like my potty mouth. I'm sorry, Tom. I can't handle it.
Tom's no longer there. And I'm sure he enjoys it because when I laugh, Seth, everybody laughs. Okay?
Oh, what a treasure trove of material that statement could have been.
Yes.
When I laugh, everyone laughs.
Seth, what is it you mentioned the other day to me that made me sit up and my jaw drop? And I can't remember what it was. For our audience, let me tell you what endears me. One of the things that endears me to Seth, besides for his wonderful sense of humor, is that he is the only person I know who occasionally can come up with an idea, not only that I never thought of, but nobody else has ever thought of or mentioned. And I'm talking about all the smart people on the news or politicians, whoever you want to look at. He can come up with an idea that is so oblique and so intelligent that I literally almost fall off with my chair. And you had one the other day that just blew me away, and I can't remember what it was.
Is it possible that it sprung from my understanding of the family dynamic and the Trumper psychology?
No. It wasn't that. Although I'd love to hear.
It's just the more that's revealed to us, Jack, and the more that we free our minds to be able to consider the whole big picture, the more we're going to feel at ease at least with an understanding of where we are.
Hang on, Seth. I'll be right back.
Okay, bud.
Don't say anything about me behind my back, Seth.
I won't talk about you behind your back because that's less fun. It's more fun to talk about you in front of your face. No, and Joe from Hoboken, Hoboken Joe C. By the way, if you're selling a home, if you're selling your home and you have a realtor, or if you're a realtor and you need the very best in photographic renderings of your home, Joseph Corrado Photography, Joe Corrado Photography. That's the place to go for all of your real estate photography needs. Also, if you need food photography done, Joseph Corrado is one of the very few licensed drone operators that is allowed to use a drone in the real estate photography business. So Joe Corrado says insurrections have consequences, and they do. Insurrections do have consequences, and we're going to learn that when we and Jack is coming back into the frame here, and we're going to learn that as time goes on. Jack, what I was just saying is that Joe Corrado, our friend Joe,
Yes.
said insurrections have consequences, and they really do. Insurrections do have consequences, and the big disconnect is going to be what the people that we were talking about, the most mayonnaise people, as Trey Crowder calls them, the basement dweller. Those people are going to come to a really ugly realization, and it goes to the core of the misunderstanding. As a citizen of the United States, you owe an obligation to our Constitution. As a citizen of the United States who is an authoritarian personality, you mistakenly thought that you had an obligation to the personage that is the president. You don't. Your obligation is to the rules that guide the rest of us, that you are a participant in, an active participant in. And so when we talk about your obligations as a citizen, your mistake, because you, Trumper, have authoritarian personality disorder. You mistake the authority that he gave you to storm the Capitol and take it back as an act which was codified in the laws of the United States. It's not. The Constitution states that you are a seditious insurrectionist. And allow me to put that in a language that you understand. You fucking scumbag traitor.
Seth, I watch a number of things on YouTube and Facebook, and one of the things that I find fascinating, there's an English guy who spent 12 years in English prison, and he's a tough little mother. And they've done a series of him visiting the worst prisons in the world. Okay. And
Yep.
Some of them are gobsmacking. He's obviously a tough boy. He's got a big scar down the side of his face like Guy Ritchie does. He's obviously been there. Okay. And I was watching one last night where it's a maximum security prison in South Africa. Okay. And you look, the guys are all in there for murder for life. They're part of the Numbers gang in South Africa, which are 3 numbers, 26, 27, 28. And he's in a cell with 6 of these guys. And they obviously let the camera in. But these guys are stone cold psychopath killers. And you look at these guys, and our English friend is a tough motherfucker. You can see it, right? And you watch these people bullying him. He has nothing to do because they'll shiv him, okay? And you look at these characters and you think, well, our friend from VIP in the Midwest who flew to Washington, this is what he's looking at. You think that's Trump's worst nightmare? Trust me, for the uninitiated, pussy camel wearing, AR carrying asshole from the Midwest, this is his worst nightmare. So,
Well, when we imprison the Trumpists, and we're going to imprison hundreds of them.
yes,
What we're doing is we're imprisoning martyrs of white supremacy, and they're going to continually be radicalized in jail.
yes, that's true.
And so by the time they come out, what we're going to need is for the technology to have caught up to the degree of their radicalization. The same way that we require technology to catch up to the radicalization of ISIS and Al Qaeda, we now need our technology to catch up to the level of radicalization of vanilla ISIS. And fail Qaeda. By the way, I think I just coined fail Qaeda myself.
Where did you get vanilla ISIS from? Because that's brilliant.
Vanilla ISIS has been out there.
Oh, it has. I guess I missed that.
But hashtag fail Qaeda is that's all me, by the way. I just vanilla ISIS and fail Qaeda. That's who these people are going to become. The only difference is they're going to go to Leavenworth and not Cuba.
Yes.
Gitmo.
Yes.
They're not going to Club Gitmo. They're going to Club Fed. Where do you think Donald Trump ends up doing his time?
I really think, Seth, that he will be in Russia.
He said he's leaving the White House the day before the inauguration. Is it possible to detain a sitting American president?
I would say no, except for the fact this impeachment.
Because he's going to make a run for it. You know that, right?
I think he is. And now that Scotland is out,
I mean, we have extradition with Scotland, don't we?
do we have it with Florida?
That's a good question.
So can you
Well,
imagine? Here's the film, right, Seth? Trump fighting extradition from somewhere. And maybe like Snowden, it changes. First he goes to Hong Kong, holds up there for a couple of weeks, and then he ends up in Russia. Very much about the American deserters who jumped the aircraft carrier during Vietnam, during the Gulf of Tonkin, and their whole trek through China and Mongolia, and it wasn't really a truck. They were trek. They were in the back of a truck and end up in Sweden. So maybe there's a whole chain of Ecuadorian embassies around the world, Seth, that will harbor Trump for short periods of time before he's extradited. What do you think?
I want you to know that as of January the 13th, when starting with the push for impeachment, we are now writing the final cells of our storyboard. We're now writing the last. We're putting the storyboard pictures in the frame, and this ends only a couple of different ways. So what we're doing is we're writing the end of the movie here, right?
Yep.
And it's got to be good. It can't suck. I mean, it can't suck. He's got to provide us with something that's fucking fabulous, or I am going to be so disappointed.
I agree.
I don't need an Easter egg. I don't need an Easter egg after the credits, with Jared and Ivanka in Dubai, and the prince comes in the room and he has briefcases of money and some device that's going to make it all, it's going to make it all better again.
It's more interesting to me in a way, Seth, of where his family ends up.
Pardoned, apparently.
Well, I think given the last week, I think those kind of pardons are going to be
tested in court.
Yes, they're going to be iffy. I think once you have the sedition charge and treason, obviously, I have a feeling these pardons won't carry the same weight.
Okay, we have a viewer that comes up with an idea that, it's one of these ideas that this week sounds crazy. Next week, it could be. Is Donald Trump the next transgendered star on the on Dancing with the Stars? Does Donald Trump end up dancing just to lose all the weight? Just to lose all the weight that he's put on, all the Burger King, Taco Bell. How is he still alive?
It's a freak of nature. It is Keith Richards and adding 200 pounds. This is not, this is beyond the understanding of human anatomy, Seth.
I feel like he's waking up every morning and Satan comes to its bedside with a tray of English muffins with clotted cream and butter and
No bagels.
And no bagels. No. Like he's like, here's your breakfast, master. That kind of like, and then he disappears off and like I should talk, like I had, leftover General Tso's for breakfast, like I'm doing anybody a favor with my weight gain.
Well, you're certainly contributing to Hannaford's.
No, China Coast.
Oh, you're joking, Seth.
China Coast. Well, where is there? That's Brooklyn Chinese. Those people are from Brooklyn. So I kind of wonder, I tell you what, let's not get into the where the Jew eats the Chinese food conversation at the end of the show. I mean, that is so 35 minutes ago. Really not what we need to be talking about. What we need to be talking about is who Donald Trump is going to go to for his gender assignment surgery.
That's true. And of course, it's going to be in LA because he's going to demand the best. Okay. And you know who he's going to see there? Jon Voight. Jon Voight will be on the table as he comes in.
Jon Voight. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. There are still a collection of Hollywood crazies that that line up behind this idiot.
Scott Baio. Scott Baio.
Was he ever an actual celebrity, or was he just a mistake?
When he was a kid and he was about 14 or 15, and he was in Bugsy Malone with Jodie Foster, that was the pinnacle of his success cinematically.
Yeah, he was on the street playing street hockey with my friend Chris in Bensonhurst. And he says, look, I can play today. I just signed this contract. Don't hit me in the face.
Oh.
I just signed this contract. Don't hit me in the face. Which, of course, he wanted to say, first.
Right.
As opposed to playing hockey and enjoying himself with his buddies.
So
and Chris was like, a fucking douchebag this kid was.
Yeah, interesting. That gives him a couple of points with me because I love roller hockey. So that gives me a couple of points. But, do you think you and I could use that excuse when we confront the mouth-breathing mob, the lizard people?
What?
That don't hit me in the face because I just signed a contract?
No, I don't think that's going to fly in the federal Hooskow. But Jack, I think our odds of going to the federal Hooskow have dropped precipitously, considering that we're not likely to be political prisoners anytime within the next 4 years.
And you know something, Seth? I worried about that for a while because both of us are extremely vociferous in our.
Yeah. But come for either one of us and see what happens.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm out in front of the house the other night, and I was wondering why nobody fucked with the house or with any of my BLM signs. And I go in front of the house, and the camera that I hid in the bushes that I screwed to the tree that I have powered inside the house apparently has an infrared light that lights up to illuminate the surrounding area.
Right.
Sure enough, I go in front of this bush and there's a red beam of light inside the bush of visible 360, 180 degrees for everybody that drives by. They know that my house is surveilling the street.
Oh my.
And that has resulted in some kind of, if anybody fuck around and find out, I know you're coming. I didn't realize that people could see my security camera.
Oh,
security
That
camera.
that defeats the whole, as Dr. Strangelove said, the whole point is lost if you keep it a secret.
The whole point is lost.
They're talking about the doomsday machine, right?
The whole point is lost. But the things that we said 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, yesterday, last week, are the same things that we understand about who Donald Trump actually is. And that is to say, there is nothing that he won't do to save himself. And the only difference is we're now getting to see how stupid those things were that he thought would save himself. And as they fail, he gets infuriated at the people that he thinks fucked up his plan.
Yep. And it's
That's
amazing, Seth. The symptom here is this is like his 60 odd court cases. Stupidity and psychosis is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking the result will be different. 60 times, Seth.
He's going to jail. And when he goes to jail, he will be subject to psychological evaluation, which will be entered into the public record.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we will get to hear, after everything, what the psychological drivers of his behavior were. It is not what we're not paying attention to. I said it before. Maybe this is what I said that you found profound. What we're not understanding is what happens after he leaves office. What happens when somebody else has the bully pulpit? What happens when the threat of retribution evaporates? What happens when the bully is punched in the mouth and gets off the stage? We're not processing that yet because we can't put ourselves in that place emotionally. What's going to happen is the country is going to take a different tone when Joe Biden is the president, and the people around him are smart enough to figure out what messaging the country needs. And the power of the bully pulpit and the power of the presidency will be brought to bear on these cultural issues that we have.
That wasn't it, because it was, as much as I appreciate that, the other idea was so much more oblique. I want to tell everybody, a number of months ago, Seth blew my mind with one of these. He said one day to me, you know, we have another problem in this country, and that is that there are no boots on the ground wars going on at the moment. And so all these people in the military have really nothing to distract them or a common enemy. And that is one of the reasons we are having problems. Now, I had never, ever, because it's a nuclear world, it's not a land war world anymore. And I thought, I have never heard that idea from anyone ever. And it is brilliant and very worth analyzing, because it is another piece of the puzzle in terms of analyzing the Trump brain.
And how many of them are here.
Yes.
And how many of them have nothing to do. And how many of them, just look around at the crowd, how many of them are people that would be off, sequestered in a foreign military operation, right age, right mentality, right motivation. You know, prior to the age of mutually assured destruction with nuclear weapons, World War I, break. World War II, break. Korea, break. Vietnam, break. Iraq and Afghanistan, break. These are actions that take a great deal of manpower from a certain segment of the population, the segment that found itself on the steps of the Capitol building. Many of those people would have been occupied doing what it is that they want to do, expressing American authoritarianism, but somewhere else.
Yes.
But warfare has become so efficient because of technology, Jack. Warfare has become so efficient that U.S. casualties in combat are dramatically lowered, and U.S. presences around the globe are also dramatically lowered because we're using other techniques, primarily technology, to affect those same geopolitical objectives.
Mhm.
Russia, North Korea, and Iran have turned that against us, and the warfare now is electronic. And that is the nature of global warfare. And you can see that Russia's use of electronic warfare achieved what they thought their objective was. It didn't. It didn't. There's going to be a backlash. But this is how we all collectively learn to deal with a different playing field.
You're exactly right, Seth. The only thing I would slightly differ in is I think the Russians succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They didn't take down the government, but they have fucked this country up so badly. Okay.
That is predicated on the assumption. That is predicated on the assumption that our allies have abandoned us and supplanted us with Russia. I reject that out of hand. Excuse me, China on the global stage.
I agree 100%, Seth. But just by undermining a huge amount of the population, their belief in the government, the democratic system of the United States, and the American myth, okay, I'm talking about the left too, okay, that is a huge battle that they have won. They haven't won the war, Seth. They're never going to. But think about having an asset, and probably not just one, in the American government for 4 years in the Oval Office.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting process when all of the information that you got is made obsolete by your own actions, time, and technology. You know, what did they get? What are they taking away from this, other than the hurt feelings of the world's greatest superpower?
Not only did they threaten and lose probably some very important American allies for the next 20 years, we are never going to be trusted again, Seth. Okay.
Well, as long as we have people like Mike Mullins in positions of power in this country, we will never be trusted again.
Well,
as long as we have people like Jim Jordan in positions of power in this country, we will never be trusted again. As long as the right-wing fascist reactionary wing of the Republican Party is an effective force for cultural change in this country, we will never be trusted again. When people want to know why we've lost standing on the world stage, look at your neighbor with the Trump flag. That is why. That's why we can't be trusted, for no other reason than these people are not fully formed adults in Western civilization. The idea of a fully formed adult in Western civilization as a participating citizen is dramatically different from what it was 30 years ago.
That's right. And you know, the French, Seth, always used to call...
Fuck the French. I'm exhausted by the French.
Yeah, I love the French. They're
their fucking military grades.
No.
Take a fucking bath, yeah.
The French are a cautionary tale. Okay. So, Seth, the French used to call Americans, and they have for decades, les grands bébés, the big babies. They're not. They're the big adolescents. Okay.
Yeah. First of all, le grand bébé is absolutely typical of what you would expect from a French person. But le grand bébé is not somebody who you should fuck with, because le grand bébé should walk down the street first, interrupting people and saying to them the same thing we said to the English. Pardon me, do you speak German? No, you're welcome. I don't give a fuck about what the French and their 17th century idea of Western civilization should be. Fuck the French. What have they innovated recently? Go to the
Mm.
International Patent Office and you tell me proportionally how many patents the French are applying for. Fuck you. What do you do? Figure out a new bacterium for cheese? I've got enough. Right. Le Grand Bébé happens to make better wine than you, and that's been proven. Fuck your attitude about how much better you are than us. How about this? How about using some of that soap that you make?
Okay, to regress back to what I was saying is,
Are we done abusing the French? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think we are. I think you've done a very good job here, and
Well, I hope I've dissuaded you from any more Francophilia references today.
you have, Seth. I will be totally silent. But to get back to that, what have the Russians won anything? Fuck yeah. Look at the amount of the American people who don't believe in the institutions of government anymore.
Okay, but the answer to that is coming because we understand that it needs to be addressed. And technology also offers fail-safe methods for recording votes. Transparency.
Okay.
Once again, the use of technology, appropriate use of technology, will bail us out of this existential threat.
Do you feel that maybe we're fighting a very gallant and probably successful rear guard action?
Who is the rear guard?
That is us fighting off the damage the Russians have done to the country.
I think in this case, credit must be given to the founders again. I think in this case, the people that crafted our founding documents deserve credit once again. I think experiment, the Constitution, which is a living and breathing document, has prevailed. And the louder that animals like Jim Jordan and Ted Cruz, the louder that they squeal, the more we all recognize that they're pigs. They just keep calling attention to themselves as such. Oh, look, I recognize that now.
Yes.
And now that the bully pulpit is gone, that this cloak of lies is removed from the American conversation, now that those things are gone, now we're going to begin to see the great reconciliation. And you and I are going to be, the ones that conduct the Nuremberg trials, the electronic Nuremberg trials here in Maine, because we've got plenty of neo-Nazis to go after. We've got plenty of anti-maskers to go after. We've got plenty of radical Bolsheviks to go after. And they're not going to go away. They're going to continue to think that their input in the public discourse is necessary. And here it is. Here is any Democratic campaign messaging. 2022, X for X office, fill in the blank, 2022. Is this what you want again?
Well, Seth,
we're going to paint ourselves with a different brush, Jack.
I know.
We're not that Republican. We're another Republican. Oh no, you're fucking not.
Well, notice in some of these seditionists on their way back to Sioux City, Iowa, notice them saying, "We stormed the White House. If it wasn't for Trump, we would
stormed the Capitol. We would have won." Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting here is, why don't we do them the courtesy of admitting that, yes, they won the battle and they can go home feeling good about themselves?
Because they lost the battle.
I know that doesn't matter, Seth.
Well, if you acknowledge that your opponent has won the battle, you embolden them to fight again. They lost the battle because the reason for their fighting was corrupt in the first place.
No,
Their efforts are the fruit of the poison tree.
I don't agree. I think they are, what they want is to hear that they were successful heroes. And once they do, because then they won't see themselves as victims. Oh, I love this, Tim. No Marshall Plan for Trumpists?
No. No Marshall Plan for Trumpists. And you know what? Of course you think that. You idolize the French, the most famous surrender monkeys on the planet. No, we're not fucking surrendering to these people. We're gonna jam this down their throat. You and I, you're not allowed off the hook, Churchill. You're gonna be right there with me, and we're gonna be fighting these motherfuckers until we're in the ground.
Listen, fuck it.
We love it.
Excuse me. I mentioned that the French always knew that the Americans were big babies. And all of a sudden, I am accused of idolizing the French. What planet have you been fucking living on?
No, but your French, by the way, your French accent is far too accurate for my comfort.
This is a question of comfort, of doing as the Romans do. I learned my French not in school. I learned it from teenagers sitting in cafes looking at girls. So my French is full of the most hideous linguistical vocabulary in terms of describing girls. You can imagine, I know every 60s word, okay? And because the French are such male chauvinists, it's an ugly French, Seth.
Okay, Martha, I'm going to play nice. Oh, so in other words, your ugly French is more like a Marseille accent than it is like a Parisian accent.
You know, in fact, even though it's Grenoble, which is in the Alps going down to southern France, nothing can duplicate a Marseille, Provence accent, which they did not speak in Grenoble. But Martha said, Seth, play nice.
I put it up on the screen.
Okay, and so would you like to address it?
Oh, her last name is LaMarche.
Yes.
Do the math.
Yes.
She wants me to stop beating up on you and the French. I get it. I'll stop. I apologize, Martha. I'm not being anti-French. I'm being anti-arrogance.
Martha, in Seth's defense, when you grow up on the wrong side of the Manhattan Bridge, you can't expect to be anyone to be anything other than provincial.
All right, we're gonna put a thumbtack in that and come back to and then come back to that later. I argue
thumbtack. I tend to visualize these things, Seth, so I can feel the thumbtack going into my leg.
Here, let me rub some salt on that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
anyway,
Jack, we've come to the end of roughly 100 minutes of showtime.
Unbelievable.
And it seems like it went by in just a second. So what's gonna happen here is we're going to take tomorrow off unless there's monumental earth-shaking news, and in that case we can come on the air at any time. We do remember then when we called them freedom fries. That lasted long, didn't it? That's another conservatism.
I had a friend who I like who said when that all came down I said, let's go to Francine and have lunch. And they said, I'm not going to go to a French place.
That's phenomenal, dude. That's the greatest story I've ever heard.
That
was because the French refused to allow us to use their airspace when we bombed Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Gaddafi, who later died when his own people shoved the K-bar up his ass.
And that's on video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. That's gruesome.
Oh.
That's gruesome. At any rate, we're going to come back Friday at noon. By that time, Trump, and by later tonight, before we all go to sleep, Trump will be twice impeached And by that time, we will know if the death threats to United States senators, literally, the death threats that our congresspeople are receiving, will have affected the vote in the Senate, or if we will finally have a Republican Party that is not cowardly United States of America, and one that needs to find itself.
Okay, Seth.
Because people who make death threats need to go to jail.
Okay,
And
so
if they come, and if there's extrajudicial resolution to that, you know, when people that make death threats catch another 44 bullet in the neck, so be it.
So my prediction, Seth, and I'll bet a dinner on this. Okay, so if you lose, you can take me to Burger King, and if I lose,
No,
I take you to Ports of Italy. Here's my prediction. Here's the
I object to the categorization. You know that I have nothing but cookbooks in my kitchen, and that I am a gourmand of great renown.
Okay. So my prediction is that on Friday at 12, Trump will no longer be president.
I say there's a greater than 60% chance of that happening.
I agree.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think that what's going to happen is the march up Pennsylvania Avenue will happen with Mitch McConnell saying, I have the votes, get out, resign, and Pence will pardon you. And I think that's getting off too easy.
Well,
that leaves us only with Letitia James and Cy Vance.
Well, not really. I think because of the week's developments, the sedition and the treason, that these pardons aren't going to fly.
No. Do you think that Pence pulls a move where he double crosses him?
I would pray for that. I don't know, Seth, but it would be for Pence. I think it would be, you have to analyze and say, what is good for Mike Pence? And then you can decide what he's going to do. Is it good for him or not?
I don't know. Ask Mother and find out.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so
right.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, everybody,
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you on Friday at noon.
And thanks for joining us, even though the competition in the news was extremely heavy today. Okay.
See you, Jack.
Bye, buddy. Bye.